Once again, good afternoon, no programmers. All right, so yun. So good afternoon, programmers. So welcome to this session. So to conclude our module 2, we'll have to finish object-oriented principles as well as um, event-driven programming in C Sharp. So as I've told you, we have already done object-oriented programming in our previous programming. I guess so. Tama ba? Ay, wala pa dahil mo i-OOP, no? Am I right? Hello?
Morgana
Hello?
meta sir.
Humana mag-OOP? Kung sa mong year? Third year?
Second year
Second
sir.
year, sir.
Okay. So nag-data stack na mo, nag-OOP na mo.
Yes sir.
Yes, sir.
Katong
Java.
ako, katong kita ninyo last time.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's good. Okay, sige. So, after which, balik ta. So, we have, so again, several programming languages and the kinds of programming languages now we have been discussing it for quite some time. So you have already done, you have already a knowledge on OOP in Java, and then this time we're going to from procedural to event driven until integrative programming. So yun yung uh, pacing natin, no, from procedural to OOP to event driven to integrative programming. So we in Visual Basic, I have just parang demonstrated to you a little bit of event driven in there. So right here in C Sharp, we're going to also discuss object oriented principles as well as review na to siya, as well as event driven. Okay. So the problem with the uh, the Visual or VS Code, no, in di ba nag-install ang VS Code last time. Though ang VS Code, it's a good programming language in for programmers, no, for developers. However, it's only limiting to develop. Wala siyang we are not able to do at the automation of the drag and drop, no, event driven programming, though pwede nato siya i-manually i-hard code nato. However, it would be really difficult for us to do that, no. So even I myself does not memorize all those codes, no, particularly if we reach into event driven programming. Pero in terms of object oriented principles, okay lang ng VS Code, no, like we can do encapsulation, inheritance and polymorphism, and even abstraction in VS Code. So now I'm going to transition into, so kamo na bahala unsay unsay IDE na inyong gamiton, either VS Code or you're going to stick with the Visual Studio. Again, they are all the same, only that si Visual Studio is for Windows lang siya. Okay? So, ang VS Code is it for different platforms. So, pwede siya sa Linux, pwede siya sa other operating systems, even Mac OS. So, we're going to open now Visual Studio. Okay. So, this was the version that we have installed last time, I guess. Or if it was 2012, so I upgraded it into 2000 and 2022. Okay, so since I am using the Windows, so I can now use the Visual Studio version. So also we're gonna be using Visual Studio for integrative programming. So para rapid development, dili dugay ato ang development kasi sa VS Code we really have to do it in a hard code way. So medyo madugay ato ang pacing sa ang transition sa ato ang learning. Okay, so right now we're going to create a project. So here, file, and then new project. So again, the idea of integrative programming is you will be introduced to different programming patterns, no? Procedural, structural, event-driven, object-oriented programming, as well as integrative programming. Okay, so right here in your screen, you will see here the same with what we did before. You can choose an option whether to develop an application using Visual Basic or any other programming languages. So right now we're going to use a C sharp language. Okay, and then particularly we're only going to develop a uh, console-based programming. Okay? Although pwede ko ta mag event-driven gyapon, pero later na nato buhaton ng event-driven. Okay? So now let's click on next, and then let's say we will name it as OOP. Yan. So you can also follow and do this one in VS Code, ha. So I mean pwede gyapon yun ibuhaton sa VS Code. So the same with what we have done before. You create a folder, and then create a file under that folder, which is of course you'll have to create a file which extension is or should be a C sharp extension. So currently I have here 6.0 .NET framework. I don't have any more 5.0 or below. So meaning to say we are currently using the latest framework for the .NET framework. So let's click on create. All right. So let's just wait for the components for the Visual Studio to arrange all the components, our file systems as well as its dependencies. So the good thing about this one is uh, once we create a project, the Visual Studio will automatically create dependencies for us. So we don't have to like do whatever we have done in VS Code. Kasi again, the Visual Studio itself is a package and a framework itself. Unlike kasi kang VS Code, you will be the one to set up your framework. So that's why kung napansin niyo nag-install ta og C Sharp extension, C Sharp framework, and even its .NET framework. Okay, so and for us to create an application, we'll have to invoke a series of command line commands or command line statements. So we'll just wait for it. Ang downside lang jud sa ato ang Visual Studio no is medyo sluggish siya, medyo hinay, medyo slow. Okay, kasi again gina-arrange man gud niya ang imuhang resources. Also because it's a package, no, a complete package of everything, no, for everything na imong buhaton. So as I've told you, C sharp transitioned into a new what they call this one, a new structure. So it does not have any something like a public static void main or yeah. So it only has this one. So all katong 6.0 and which is the latest one man, no. So katong 5.0 below, kailangan to siya nato siya class something. So gi-shorten niya ang C sharp, gi-shorten niya ang structure niya instead of having it like napay class at the same time naapa siya uh, mga class and main. So instead iyang gibuhat is kanina lang. Okay? Okay. So ayan, so I guess last time atong gibuhat was or nag-review ta about the basic structures of C sharp, no, like if conditions, variables, it's the of course its structures as well as loops, no. So with the array naman, arrays in C sharp are the same with Java. So meaning to say when you are going to be sige, i-review sa nato gamay. When you want to declare a variable, let's say you want to declare a num array of your Java, of your C Sharp, it's the same thing in Java. So you do like this. Ayan. So it's actually the same. Yeah, the only ano lang difference is not flexible. Si C Sharp gusto niya din niya siya i-declare. Ayan. So, correct. Uh-huh. It's a local variable. Yes. Okay. So, yeah, that's it, no? When you want to run, of course, I mean, if you are going to instantiate your array, it's the same thing with Java. When you want to initialize the like elements for your array, you can also do that. Let's say for an instance, we have here double, let's say price, and then you want to initialize a values for your array, you can just have uh, something do like this. So, ayan. Mm-hmm. Kanilang jud, no? Unlike Java, either diri ka magbutang or either sa C Sharp, you are not allowed to put here your brackets, no? So, kana lang, malimtan lang ako siya because again, I'm used into uh, writing programs in Java. So again, that's it. Inana lang siya. And then if you want to access the, let's say, file, let's say this is price, and then you want to access, let's say, the index 0, so you will have uh, the 45.78 displayed in your application. So when you click start debugging, so this will display the hello world and at the same time the price, which is 45.78. So it's now building the application, as you can see. So build started, and it's actually, ayan, build succeeded rather. So this time this will display your programs right here. I mean your in this command line. So ayan, hello world 45.78. Okay, so that's it. Inana lang, no? So let's say for an instance, we are going to uh, yan. So actually the same lang jud ang array sa Java ug C Sharp. Okay, so ayan. So if you want to like create a, like we are going to determine, let's say, evaluate either among these numbers kinsa ang, let's say, sige sa matong pwede ni highest, no? So i-determine nato kinsa ang highest, so we can do that by doing this one. So this is the the basic logic, no, that you have I guess gotten from your previous na mga uh, programming courses. So let's say we have price and 0, and then we'll have here a loop. So loops, whether you use while, do while, or for loop in C Sharp, it's all the same in Java. So let's say we have I is 0. Let's start with 1 because we already have 0 there, no, sa tong price. And then let's have here I less than, so let's have 6. So duha na ini, wait, 47. Okay, and then let's have I plus plus. So what's the problem with this one? Let's just mouse over this. So because this is a double price, so it's not compatible. So we either have to parse it, or i-assign na lang nato siya sa compatible niya na variable. Okay, so now this time we'll have here the comparison saying that if a value, let's say ato ang ano is the max variable, no, so we'll just need to have here max something like if max is let's say less than price, we have so I, and then max will have the new price. So every time na I mas less than sa current value sa max, after comparing it with this one, the max will have new value. So actually, pwede na ito mapakita na ang max, nag-change ang value every time na mas less than pa siya kay price. So leaving it, after the loop, it will give you the highest or the max value. So something like max value. Okay, or so we have max. All right, so let's run this one, and yun, no? So it's almost the same. If not almost, again, nearly the same yun sila. Almost or nearly parehara. So it's something like that. So ano na si Java and C Sharp. That's why daghan nagaingon na yeah, it's actually C Sharp is actually based in Java programming language. So another thing also in if Java has for each loop, C Sharp also has its for each loop, no? Let's say double val in, di ba sa Java kay ang for each niya is in ani, let's say price. Okay? So sa ano naman is in price. Okay? So for each, ayan, for each double val in price. So you don't have to use any more integer, I mean, what they call this one, index base here, because everything is stored in val. So meaning to say, whatever is inside of the array is also in val. So this time, instead of you do max price, you'll just have to use val and then do it like as val. So this is for each loop. Okay? So ayan. So usually ginagamit na ang for each loop for displaying all the values in array instead of using the index base na mag-index pa ka. So the easier way would be something like this one. Okay. So do you have any questions so far? Wala. Okay, so with regards to like switch structures, no, select case, it's also the same in C Sharp and Java are also the same. So ayan. So that's it. Now let's go and proceed to object-oriented principles. Okay, so it has been very I mean, it's very obvious now that when we talk about object-oriented programming, it's one of the programming concepts that you will really need to grasp starting as early as now. Because when we talk about object-oriented programming, it's the principle that is like implemented in the industry. So, in fact, when we had a tour in Manila and Cebu during our educational tour, no, because I was a chaperone of my students before, and every company that we have visited, uh, the entry for for software developer no na entry level, ang one of the things they actually look for the unsa ni applicants is kaning kabalo og OOP, no. So they started with the interview, like what is object oriented principles, how do you understand classes and objects, and what are the four principles or pillars of OOP. So kana ang mga questions. So particularly uh, sa sa Cebu. So why it's like that, no? Diri sa atoa, diri sa Davao, ang atoa manggong murag kanang ecosystem sa IT kay mostly naga-online ta, no? Gina-outsource ato ang skills, no? So meaning to say direct ato ang from any country in the world. So meaning to say kaning sa Davao manggod na ecosystem, usually kung mangita tag trabaho, ang makita nato dire sa mga trabaho sa online is usually mga web, no, mga framework, no, .NET framework, mga uh, sa panikaning Laravel, no, mga Vue.js, things like those. But if you go to Cebu class, dito sa ilahang IT park, most of the companies there, ang ilahang ginapangita kay katong na knowledge in C++, in Java, and in Python. So mo na ilang pangita no na mga skills, no. In fact, ang among students that time ilang gi try og paper code. So when we were there in the parang seminar, they were given parang three sets of questions, and then they will need to program it in a sheet of paper. So parang isa daw to sa ilang pag gusto ka na mag-apply is you must have you can really write a program even if you're not facing in front of your PC, because it's no difference kung atubang daw ka sa PC and then you don't have the knowledge and the skills as well as the logic. It's like you do trial and error in PC. So what they look for is katong na ay logical thinking, no, na ay nadyoy mas understanding about the what they call this one, the idea of programming. So particularly in problem solving. So yun yung pinaka nila. So problem solving. Then second is katong pag mo pasar ka ato nila, mapasar nimo tong paper coding, you will now then be interviewed. So sa interview mo tong mga concepts na usually ang ginapangutana na is OOP, no. What are the four pillars of OOP? So yun, gitagaan sila mga tips. Tapos what are the four pillars of OOP? Yun, encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, and abstraction. So mao na tong focus karon. Okay. So now balik na ita, no? So I've discussed about the ecosystem sa Cebu nganong inana or even Manila, kasi lamang gud sila yung mga pabrika, no? Nasa yung mga pabrika, na sila yung mga nadito ang ilahang ang mga server, no, most like na sila yung mga data center, na sila yung mga server. So nadito ang mga company, dagko na company. So kailangan they have to hire people who are knowledgeable in mga programming na for server, no? So usually C++, Java, and if sa mga technological advancements naman and machine learning, so mga Python naman ilang ginapangita. So in ana, no? So unlike diri sa Davao manggod, ang ecosystem nato, as I've said, wala tay pabrika, no? Like we have PLDT, but we don't have that's only an office, no, that caters service. Pero wala jud ra ang pabrika sa PLDT, wala ra ang data center sa PLDT. So it's actually there, no, sa Visayas and sa Mindanao. In ang Usually kung mapansin nato ato server nasa Cagayan, wala diri sa Davao, no, sa PLDT. So mo nang diri sa Davao ang relevance sa skills sa programming in terms of sa Java and C++, medyo wala kayo siya natagaan og what you call this one, wala ka siya natagaan og kanang importance kasi again when most of our graduates here in Davao kay landed sa job wherein related sa mga outsourcing or offsourcing, no, kina-outsource ta to do mga web frameworks. Ayan. Okay, so enough for the mga story. So let's go and now develop or create a program using or implementing OOP principles. Okay, so obviously, the OOP from the very start na nag-ano pa ka sa imuhang program, like nag-create ka diri sa C# or sa VB or sa Java, it's there already, no? OOP is there already. Only that kung the first time pa nimo nag learn og programming, dili nimo na like dili pa na siya introduce because it's complex. Okay? So like this one, if this has an invisible class. So obviously, if this has invisible class, you are actually accessing an object, no? Object-oriented programming, meaning to say we directly access instead of we have a direct access on the variable as well as on the data. In object-oriented programming, we deal with objects. So why is it important? Ganong inaana man ka ano si OOP? Take a look at this as like if you're like developing a, let's say, a game, no, so by just creating a human, no, maghimo kag human or like physics, no, sa human physics, no, like naghimo kag structure sa ka human body. So kanang hands, kanang feet, kanang eyes, kanang parts sa atong human body, no, or sa human anatomy, everything na makita and everything na visible, even invisible, are all objects. So in object-oriented programming, we deal with every object, or shall we say every part sa human body, so that it can move independently. Kasi kung dili nato ma-move independently ang like we don't deal with objects or like object-oriented programming, it's impossible for us to create a program na one hand will have a gesture of something like mag-hi, ang isa will have something like naka-steady lang. So even at the same time naka-blink ang eyes while naka-blink ang eyes, pwede na magstorya ang mouth. So that's actually an object. So meaning to say, for you to create a human human body, you'll have to break it into different parts, and then imo lang siyang i-compile nimo as one. So yan, no, even mga cars, no, even bicycle, pinaka simple, no. So in layman's term is ano na to, Bisaya na to, di ba? Ang bicycle, like matanggal ang ligid, matanggal ang lingkuranan, matanggal ang kadena, matanggal ang manubela, because every part sa bicycle is treated as an object. If it's not treated as an object, meaning to say, ang bicycle will be treated as one object. It's not treated it's not parang wala siya gi-break into different objects. What happened is when something or when a part or a certain part or specific part sa bicycle will be, let's say, maguba, so the bicycle cannot be anymore fixed, no, dili na siya maayo. So dili na siya pwede maayo. It's because let's say bicycle ay ang ligid part jud sa bicycle, like dili siya matanggal-tanggal. Okay? So that's the idea of objects, no? So we can as one object, it can be broken into pieces. And when one part is only like when one part is only parang na something wrong, that's the only thing na atong i-replace. So inana ang idea sa object-oriented principles. Okay? So even here kani sila makita nato, this is the idea that this dependencies contains mga components are all in the because of the virtue of object-oriented principles. Okay, so to start doing that, let's create a class. So with that, so let's create a new item. So you can also create existing item if you have. Pero this time, let's create new item. And then right here, you will be prompted with the show dialog box. Okay, and then you can choose whatever items you want to choose. Okay, so now we can create a class, we can create an interface or anything na pwede nimo i-add like text file. But this time we're going to create a class because that's the fundamentals of object-oriented principles. So, oops, mali. Sorry. Pangalan sa din ako ang class dapat. So, ako na lang ni siyang i-change. Wait ha. So, program.cs is our main class. So, let's have here add new item. And then let's have here class. So, let's say we have let's say student. Yeah. Okay, so now since the name of our project is OOP, the namespace is automatically called as OOP. So I kani since naanad ko og kina Java, so ako ang usually ginagamit is pina Java na style. Okay, so you can remove the internal or you can omit internal or class, the automatic class. So later on, we're going to be discussing about different access specifier for our program or for our in C# program. So this is now the name of the class. So meaning to say this namespace can contain many different classes. So pwede na siya mag-contain of different classes. So for now, we're only dealing with first with the student class. Okay. Sige. So let's say what are the properties that make a student as an object? Okay. So yun, no? Class. We are creating the class student. The class student creates an object. So as an object, student, therefore it has property. Okay, and how do we define or how do we describe student? It's because of we can define or we can describe a student through its property. So daghan usay may mga properties sa students. So dili na ako mangutana kay di na mo dili mangyapon mo manubag. Okay, so let's start with, by the way, same with Java, no, natay public, private, and protected na access specifier. So obviously, if you're going to use public, this object, okay, or this field, no, data member of our program or class data member will not be accessible in other or outside of this class that we are creating. If ever na if ever na i-declare nimo siya as public, meaning to say once i-import nato siya sa other class, this can be inherited or this can be used or this can be accessed. So sa protected naman, it's the idea is it's between private and public. So let's start with public muna. Sige. So let's deal with first private. So private int, let's say ID. Yeah. Then we'll have public string name. Let's have gender. Okay, and then public int age. So these are called data members. Okay, so these are called data members. Okay, so now speaking of a class, we can now access all these data members. Okay, so these data members are a are the field property. Okay, field property of your class. So let's go back to program CS. Okay, so let's erase this one and so tanggalon na to na siya. Okay, so how can we call the student? So this one, so we'll have to use, so if you can observe atong student na ay namespace OOP, and this one is basing on what is basing on the name of the our solution or project. Sige. So let's go to program CS. Let's have here using, so OOP, ayan. So we can now use our you can now call or instantiate the a class inside of this what they call this one, student na class or namespace na OOP. Okay, so let's have here student. Yan. Oh, yan, it's already visible. So student st equals new student. Yan. So this is what we call instantiation. Okay, so if we say instantiation, this means that you have the new keyword. So the new keyword pertains to it means that we are actually instantiating an object. So therefore, st there, no, kaning st is the object of the student class. Okay, so that's the relationship of a class and object. So class, object, and then method. So if you ever wonder how come student is becomes a method, so method is anything, or a method is a procedure that has what they call this one, that has instructions or source codes which invokes an actions once it is called. So kung sa Bisaya pa, kung tawagon nato daw tawagon nato ang isa ka method, mo perform na siya or mo invoke na siya ang action, whatever written instruction or procedure inside of that method. So in OOP, it's very important for you to understand the idea of a class, the object, and the method. Kasi partner dyan na silang tulo. Okay? So class, object, and method. Ayan. So you cannot create an object without a class. A class cannot call the method without an object unless you will do static, but unfortunately there's no such thing as, I mean, the idea of static is only like relevant to Java programming language. Okay, so now ako ni siya ibutang diri para di nyo malimtan. Okay, so when you are going to access now the all the data members. So by the way, if you try to look at this naka-violet, no? So pwede nimo siya i-categorize into kani siya If you ever wonder nga nung naa ni siya nang gawas ng equals, get hash code, get type, as well as toString, these are all properties of object. So what is object, by the way? Si object is a parent of all objects or classes in C#. So, meaning to say, every time mag-create ka og class, automatically, kani sila mga objects, gi-inherit na nimo na siya, which is, that is the second one, or the second principle of OOP. So, which is later, I'm gonna be discussing to you what is more like to do encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism in C#. So, when you go back here, this is the field that says age, gender, and name are all field of our student class. So, naka-blue, no? So, meaning to say, these are all fields that are, or members of our class that are publicly declared or declared as public. Okay, so if you try to look at it, it's not seen, I mean, the ID is not seen or displayed here. It's because ID is declared as private. Okay, so, ayan. So, obviously, kung tawagon na tong name, isulod na to siya sa console. Okay, so it doesn't have anything na display for now. Because again, we don't set any display for our, or any value for our name, unless may tag st.name equals, let's say, Andrea. Okay, st.name equals, yes, just wait for a while ha, nado importante lang. Hello, hi guys, welcome back. Sorry for that interruption, no. So, balik ta. Let's back where we left off. So, st.age. So, we'll have here, let's say, 34. St dot, sa matutong ibutang, gender. We'll have here, let's say, female. Ay, sorry. Uy, what happened to you? So, ayan, no? Now, how can we access the ID? Okay? So, how do we access the ID for now? So, because it's private. Okay? So, sige, what's the advantage and disadvantage of declaring data members as a public or private? So, i-expound na ko na ron sa inyo ha. So, i-display sa nato ning mga values. So, we'll have here age. We'll have here gender. So, let's run. So, obviously, this will display the uh, the data of Andrea, which says that its age is 34 or her age is 34 and she is a female. So while waiting, let me discuss to you. So the idea of declaring this as a public, the advantage is ma-access nimo siya anytime sa imuhang program. Okay? That's the advantage kasi anytime pwede nimo siya matawag-tawag or ma-call from there. All right? So, but the problem there is, what's the essence of making or putting it in a class where I can actually do it something like, why would I need to have these things, where I can do something like string name equals Andrea. Diba? So, the point there is, obviously, you don't create a class which has private which has public data members as its field. Why? Because nawala ang essence na nag OOP ka. Okay? So because you can do naman like this one. So murag kumbaga there's no need of declaring another class. So siguro sige para lang ma-arrange nako na instead of diri akong mga variables dito makita sa class. Well, okay naman, wala may problem with that, no. Pero the idea is in ani siya. So that's why we do this kind of programming. Although we can do that, we can do whatever I have shown you earlier. The problem is, sorry. So that's one, no? The problem is that, what happened to name? Ayan. Ayun. So, dugay lang di ay. So, the problem is, kung inani ang imuhang idea of pag create sa class and then imuhang tawagon tree because it's you declared is as a public members, then there's no point. Okay? So, you'll need to make this as private. Okay? So now, if I am going to, ang problem with nag-private ko dre, or like, sige, naghimo og class, tapos nag-private ko sa integer na ID, and pag adto na ko sa PCAS class, I could not even call it from there, and how I would possibly call that the value of ID. So that's the another problem. So that is why when we talk about the OOP, first principle is encapsulation. So when we talk about encapsulation, you declare all your data members or your fields into private, and when you access it, it's through public members through a method. Okay, because the idea is that if this can be accessed outside of your class, meaning to say this can be anytime, this can be changed anytime. So pwede na nimo ma-access, pwede na siya ma-change, pwede na siya available lang siya sa public. So it's not good. Okay, i-try na to or example na to si private. So let's say I'm going to create here a public void, okay, and then let's say int na lang. So public int, and then let's say get ID. And then I would return the ID. Okay, return ID. So where will I ano the value no of ID? So I would update the value of ID. Let's say dito na ako buhaton sa constructor. So later I'm going to discuss to you what constructor is. But for now, I I know no kabalo na mo gamay sa ng constructor or nata idea na of course ana during sa to ang OOP. So i-public na to siya. So let's say you have here ID plus plus, something like that. Okay? So meaning to say every time you call the student or you create an object of the student, the ID will increment by 1, making it, let's say, we start with ID is equal to 0. Okay? From then on, natawago na to ang constructor, dapat this becomes 1. Okay. So, and we call this get ID to get the value of the ID. So, if mo anhita dire or as sa program, we have here st, okay, or sige, tawagon na nato diretso from here. So, st.get ID. Yan. So, all right. So, then, this is like, buhaton natin siya as st1, 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 st1. So, st1, 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 st1. So, let's say declare ta another, let's say st2. So, this is, let's say, Ben. This is 24. And this is st2, 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 and this is st2. So st2, st2, st2. Okay, so let's run our program and let's see what changes it has been in the display. So while waiting, are you guys following? Wait. One.
Sir.
Very yes, sir. Murag suko man kayo.
Ay,
So,
wala sir.
ay, oday. So, medyo ano lang akong ano no, boses kay na ako'y cold, flu di ay. Nagka-flu.
Ay sir, excuse me sir.
Oo.
Kanang pwede man na siya sa Java no, sa Eclipse.
Ang C Sharp?
Kana na code gapon.
Oo, pwede.
Okay sir.
Pwede ra gihapon. Pero mag-Java ka at least na po kay bagong language na may balaan, no? Pero pareha halos almost the same lang gihapon.
Yes sir.
Okay. Sige. So yeah, pwede. Wait ha, get ID, st2. Ako yung st1 dito, st2. So ako lang gitry kasi wala nag-2 ang get ID. Wait lang. So dapat 2 na siya. So wala nag-update, 1 lang gihapon. That means plus 1. Okay, ako saning anohon tawagon. Kung natawag ba siya. Console.writeLine, i-trace na to ID. So let's say if Naga-update ba ang value niya every time gi-call nato siya kaduha? Ay, okay kasi 1 man dahil diri, no? So, kaya siya, 0 man dahil, so always siya 1 pag instantiate. Okay, so that's the reason nga nung this one is still 1 gyapon. Okay, because we made it na mali atong logic. So, ayan. So, that's one of the reasons na kani siya, okay? Dapat kailangan ni siya og mga like setters, no? Kanang ginabuhat nato na setters and getters sa isa ka data na gi-encapsulate nato. So example, i-encapsulate nato ni siya and the ID is declared as 1. Okay? So meaning starting value sa ato ang student is 1 and then every time wait na insert. So we have here this that ID equals to ID plus plus or something like this ID plus plus. So ayan. Okay, so 1. Ayan. Okay, so that is the idea of, okay, but we never fully encapsulated this one, ha? So, para ma-fully encapsulate nato ang isa ka class, we'll have to make things na kani siya dapat dili na ni siya ma-access, no? Dapat naka-private na ni. So, therefore, when you go back to your program.cs, kani siya, everything na naka-private na na-access nato ni siya by this one are now going to be like mag-prompt na siya with an error something because you can no longer access this one because these are declared as public. So, the idea is you'll have to create setters and getters for all of your data members. Okay? But the easiest way ana is creating property. Wait. Yan na lang. So, set name ako sa i-arrange lang class sa so, para dili siya kayo taas ang i-consume na line space. Oops, this is name. So the same gyapon siya sa Java. This is a reference that calls itself, no? So meaning to say when you create a walay automatic dire. Sige. This means it reference the object itself. Instead of mag-create kag object, mag-create, you can call it like this. So what I'm trying to say kanang sa this is, let's say magbutang ko diri og student S1. So instead na ang S1 gamiton nako si S1, like ibutang nako siya this S1.name, S1.id. So I don't have to do that anymore. What I will do is I will use the this keyword. No, so mao nang idea or role ni this keyword. So kani si this keyword is a keyword that calls the reference of an object itself. Yeah. So this will be get name. Ayan. So I'll just have to call unless kung lahi-lahi og inyong sana lahi ang same gyapon sa Java kung lahi ni inyong ano dire inyong member like kani pareha man ang ID og ID so dapat mag-reference jud ka. Pero let's say sa name pareha man day gyapon. So if dili let's say dako ni ang n dire so pwede na ka dili mag-this dira no like name is equal to name. Makasabot na si Java si C# daan. Pero usually dapat para sa convention practice sa industry is kung unsay imong data members dito mao pod dapat ang mag-reflect diri sa imong property sa pag-set nimo name. Ayan. So this will return name. So we'll do the same for gender and for age. Ayan. So this is set gender. Yeah, gender. Get age. And then this is so dapat string ni siya. This is string also. This is int. Int ba ni? Yeah, int siya. And then this will return gender. And then this will return age. And then this should be gender. So gender and gender. Ayan. So this will be age and this will be age. So I guess we are done. So we have already setters and getters to our class student. So we have the option to diretso na lang tab buhatan ako ni siya public string display. Okay? So magbuhat po kog void na display. So this is void display. Yan. So I have two versions of display. This is what we call method. Sige, niya na lang para yeah, sige ako na yan. Method over, this is called method overloading. Okay? So in here, what I'm going to do is i-store na ko tanan akong value sa or akong store na ko akong value sa let's say name. Ayun lang. So name na lang diretso. So let's say name ID. Wait ID plus \t name plus \t gender plus \t age. And then \n. Okay, so I'm going to return. Pwede na po na ako na-delete say return. Ayan. So if I'm going to copy this one here. So this is void display. So this will have like I want it na ID. So na C# na tandi lang tapi na Java. Okay, now for this one, atong buhaton would be, so, anahon lang yapo nato ni, kopyahon na nato ni. So, this is string display output na lang. And then I will have here ID. Okay, and then name. Gender. Hello? Murag nawala lagi. Hello?
Sir?
Oh, nawala akong
Sir?
screen.
Sir?
Nawala akong screen.
Yes,
Wala
sir.
gini
Wala.
mo ang screen, sir.
Wait. May na lang na ako ikuan. Isa ka monitor. Kaya nakita na ako nawala. Kaya ay dugaya. Na. Wala pa.
Wala pa, sir.
Nawa daw. Nana guys.
Nana, sir. Nana, sir.
Okay, sige.
Ano, sir?
Alright. Ay, hala. Backslash n. Alright, so I have here two. Ay, nasobra. Okay, so I have here two options. So wala sana akong i-overloading. Ayan lang sana. Okay, because that's the part of we are going to do polymorphism. So I have here display which displays all ano lang ID, name, gender, blah blah blah. And then kandi siya i-output niya ID tapos with katong value sa ID, name, age, so on and so forth. So what happened here is maybe na ano lang eh. One, two. So this is Okay, so wait ha. Medyo na-error din na part. Type student already defines a member called display. Output na bitaw niya akong gibutang dire. Ayun, late lang siya nag-ano. So balik na sa program.cs. So right here, what I will have to do here is akong buhaton dire is mag-set na kong mga value no. st 1 dot set yan. So instead of yan. Tapos with this one, mas safe na imuhang data. What do you mean mas safe ang data? Example, imong ID, let's say, you don't want na, kasi kung public nato ning ID, di ba, makapwede rata makayon, ST1 is, ID is equal to -1. So, pwede rata makaset ana, makapasa og value sa ID, -1. And that's not actually good. So, tapos, kung ang atong buhaton diri, ang business logic na diri, like diri ka mag-if condition na if set ID 1, set ID is equal to negative value, so di mo siya dawaton. So why not do it in the in here, no? Why not do it in your program where you actually set your ID? Example, dili nimo butag condition. So kani wala na ni idea ang user ani nga nakay condition ana. So because this is what we call business logic. So naa ang logic nimo behind sa imuhang gi-encapsulate na class. So wala na siya care kung giunsa nimo na, basta you have an evaluation whether an ID is valid or not. So let's say we have if it's less than or equal to 0. So any number less than or equal to 0 is negative, and let's say you want to display something na okay, so let's say this is we're going to display here console. Kailangan mo type ano yun? Right line. The invalid. Yan. Tapos else. Yan. So invalid blah blah blah. So with that, na nakay conditions, let's say may kung -3. Okay? So ako sa ning tanggalon. So it won't proceed to di ba? So it won't proceed adding your value because the value that you pass to your ID is negative and it's not valid. Okay? So kana lang sa So that's one of the advantages rather if we are going to encapsulate our data. Okay? So we encapsulate our programs. So ayan, kani siya na inyong magamit din ng mga techniques mo ninyong magamit na sa dapat inani na sa inyong OOP, no, object oriented principle. So kung mapansin ninyo na siya nakabutang invalid. Ayan. So meaning dili niya dawaton because it's invalid. So if in case na that is let's say 1, so meaning that's actually valid. So st that. So you can also do that for setting name. So you can also do that for setting gender and setting age. And in fact, pwede po mas okay ninyo ni gamiton sa mga what you call this one? Sa mga numerical, no? So saan ito? Set name, tama. Okay, so this requires value. So let's say Andrea, female, and age. Okay, so if I'm going to call to display, no? So right line. So I'll just have to call it sa dito ang age nga hindi niya dawaton. Balik sa tayo sa age siya. Okay, kasi ang age na to is naka-string. So kaya pala nag-warning siya. Balik ta. So we have here So I have to display no katong display og output. So st1 dot display. Ayan. So see, pag mag-encapsulate ka, everything na naa sa imuhang kani is mo ni ang mga business logic nimo, nadri imong if conditions, nadri imong mga whatever mga methods na imong ibutang tira, and this is which is available na lang for calling. So pag matawag na nimo, I mean pag imo to siyang i-implement sa imong main class, so mo na lang ni imong program or imong codes, dili na siya mag so if like balik-balik ko nimo na siya tawag to any other forms, or let's say na kay another, let's say mag-integrate na ta no, so katong gi-encapsulate na to na class, katong mga methods na naa dito inside of it can be called anytime we want. So if we're going to run this one, yun. So if you can observe, ang kaning 1 Andrea female 12 mo lang sa display. Ang katong sa output ID 1 name Andrea gender female age 12. Mao po na siya ang ginabuhat sa output, no? So ayan. So depending on unsa inyong unsa inyong giunsa niyo siya pag ano. Although you have the option to kung maggusto ka like tawag-tawagon po nimo ang instead of is display, pwede ka mag-st.get. So nakay let's say i-display lang nimong gender, i-display lang nimong age, or i-display ba nimo tanan. So yun nakay ano, pwede nimo matawag anytime to sila, no? So st1.getID, yan, st2 st1.getName, something like that. Yan. All right? So you have the option to either access only the individually, or you have the option to if display all, tawag na lang mo siya tanan, display all. So any questions so far before we proceed? Hi, question guys.
Sir. Wala.
Sure. Okay.
Same,
So
sir.
same ra jud, no? Okay. So now pwede na niyo ni i-array, no? Like para dili na mo sige declare og objects, instead of mag-declare mo og objects. So kung mag-ano mo, inyong buhato na lang is ano na, st1, so let's say 0 equals to new student. Yan. Then kani st0 di ay. So st0, yan, ana lang jud siya. Yan. Wala, alas 5 naman di ay. So if you want to create another, no, so pwede inyo na po ni siyang instantiate. So this is 0. Let's say mag-create na po ka for index 1. So ayan, if i-loop nato ni, no, I hope na nakuha ninyo na siya. If ato ni i-proceed into i-program, this becomes really powerful kasi pwede na siya makastore og 10 records. Okay? And then I forgot to mention the katong constructor. Wait ha. Ayun na ni. So something like this one. Ana lang, simple lang kayo, no? 1, this will be 2. Let's say this is Ben. This is male. And let's say this is 24. Okay? So let's proceed to constructors. Okay, dire na lang. So when we speak or when we talk of constructors, constructors are used to initialize or instantiate your object. So I don't think so kung nag-declare ta constructor dire. So there are 3 types of constructors na ay default constructors, parameterized constructors, and copy constructor. So I'm not gonna be discussing that one further. So when we talk about sa constructors, these are the same name with your object. So, or class rather. So, pwede ka magbutang dire og if you guys want to declare na ang ID nimo is kung nag-initialize lang ka or nag-instantiate lang ka is to 0. Ang name nimo is let's say null, something like NA because you don't set specifically sa imuhang name. Then gender is equal to let's say by default gusto nimo na ang tanan gender every time mag-create kag object kay male. So na mga inana no instances then imuhang age into 0. Okay? So pwede pud ka mag-overload og constructor. Yan. So let's say you want na ID. So int ba niya? Int ID. So you can have here mag-set lag ID. So you can call the set ID. Ayan. Pwede po nimo siya na instead of mag-set ID blah 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 ka, imong buhaton is this that ID equals to ID. But then again, na naman tay setter ID, so you don't have to do this anymore. So, ayan. Kana, pwede na nimo siya buhaton. Ayan. Okay. If you want to further, ano pa, create a constructor of your student. Wait. So, tanggalon sa nato ni. So, we'll create another constructor or let's say overload the constructor. So, you will have here ID and then string name. So, you can just call set name. Yan. Tapos name. Something like that. And you can proceed with what further na i-overload pa nimo imong mga constructors. So now the good thing with what they call this one with this one is sa C#, you don't have to specifically do set and get. Kasi ang kanimang kung C# na siya automatically property. Okay? So, example, I want this set ID and get ID or let's say kaning set name and get name. Na instead of i-separate na ko siya as a method, I will just create a property. So, how I will do that? So, let's say public string, let's say name. Okay? And then, I will have here get. Okay? And then, return name. So this is something na wala kay Java. So we have here set tapos this or this that name equals name. Wait, i-save sa nato kay dugay na siya magana. Hello? Oy, nag-ubo. Ubo-ubo pod. Isa po nakipang ubo dira. Pait baga. Pait baga, no? Usong ubo-ubo ro, no? Actually, may na lang human ako.
Yes, sir. Ubusipon.
Ubos sipon. Isipon gani ko. Isipon pud ka ano? Isipon pud ka unsa ni? Kasi tawag ani, si pangalan ani ni ano? Oh, wait. Tara, tama man. Set, get, set. Tama. Ha. Dili niya dawaton. This is property for creating property set and get. Anyway, this is maybe because of the framework that I use, 6.0. So 5.0, we used to do this like this. Now for setter and getter. Sige. So, do you have any question, guys?
Yun na, sir.
Wala na? Okay. So,
Yes, sir.
okay. Sige, wala na. Alright. So, how about sa inheritance or polymorphism? Napay question, ano pa ba? I-discuss pa na to? Or no need na?
Kuan lang gamay, sir, kanang murag para mahinuma. Kuan lang na mo
Ma-recall lang.
ma-refresh o ma-refresh lang sa mo.
Sige. Kadiyot lang ha mo, inom sa akong tubig ha.
Sige, sir.
Break sa ta break.
Hello. Hi guys. Scratch.
Nawala lagi.
Muna, wala
Break
naman
na
daw.
ba?
Inom
Ay, break
Inom na
tubig.
tubig siya.
Sige. Boom. Mental break.
Nagpasukod na ko kong t-shirt. Duha na lang ako lang dito.
Open cam.
Gani kay dili na daw di daw nila sugdan ko kuan.
Ako to. Tignan na lang nyo ba? Nga pasok din na lang ninyo. Palago ako uniform. May kwarta manggod.
May pagkabungki na lang ing imong sukod yapon.
Di may premso ko di bungki oy.
Dako ra si bungki.
Mas dako si Kurt oy, taka.
Dako na si Kurt.
Di kadawat bungki. Okay ra na ke.
Ay pag na Kurt. Di ba mag-defense man niya?
Unta dili.
Sige. Di ba dayon?
Unta. Ampuan ang tatanan.
Ampo nagsugod.
Demar.
Isa tagalan sa nakakong. Ay, yaw.
Kasi tanggalan mo ban.
Wala, wrong send to.
Lah. Tanggalan mo ban ba?
Amaw.
Bibol. Bisibol.
Ilis na part na.
Gagawin yun doon, boy. Dautan nga iba na eh.
Saan naman po?
Record ba ni Bando?
Kasi first presenter.
Wala, bunoto naman.
Bulot mo na.
Patay.
Hello, welcome back. Hello, guys.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Sir.
Okay. Sige, so
Hello.
hello. Okay. So this is how we do encapsulation, no? And if you guys want to actually this is already polymorphism. So polymorphism it means that poly means multiple or many, and morphe means many forms. So ability of a class to have many forms. So in fact, pwede ta mag additional diri og mga other setters, or let's say mayroon kag instead of individual sets and gets, you can actually do in setters for set name, set gender, or like if you guys want to do like this one, so public void set student, no? So pwede nimo siya i-ano ID sorry, int ID string name, yan, and then you can just call set ID, yan. So with the ID, something like that, and also set name with the name. Ayan. So you can also do another what we call this one. So with this, nakay, let's say int age, then you will have additional here set age. So with this, your class is capable of doing polymorphic methods or na siya mga polymorphic methods. So again, sky is the limit. It's up to you kung, sorry, age day. It's up to you kung unsaon nimo siya or how do you plan to create your encapsulated class. So actually, kung puhon, kung ano na jud tag mga integrative program sa integrative programming, mas ma-appreciate na ninyo ang idea of doing like this kind of mga polymorphism. So yeah, this is what we called polymorphism. So this is what we called method overloading. Ayan. So ang method overriding is runtime polymorphism. So we'll do that alas 5 naman di ay actually alas 4 akong klase sa PICAS. Pero sige, ako na lang ipaspasan ni siya. Okay? And if ever na naa kay, let's say class, let's say pet, and you want to inherit from the student, all you just need to do is ani lang yung buhaton class. So instead na mag-inherits, imong buhaton is pet student, no? So this time whatever na naa kang student will be inherited by our pet. So okay, naka-internal class ato ning tanggalon. Protection level. Wait ha. Are you guys still there?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Wala. Di ko'y maghimo na lang kung bagong kuan class para mapa-inherit lang nato or mapakita na nako inheritance. 48 hapit na jud. Okay, so right after this one, so everything na makita nato from or everything na naa kay student na will be inherited. So in fact, actually there's not much difference kang pet o kay student. So wait lang ha. Inaccessible. So actually naka-public man si student. What happened? Ay, ito ha. Wait lang kay late lang iyahang class. How come naging private siya? So gitreat sa ako ang program ang student as private. So it's no longer accessible. So I don't know what seems to happen. Basi na ako'y natandog ganina. Wait ha. Basi inyo ning gi-remote ha. Natandog. Guys, hello? Are you still there?
Wala, sir, oy.
Yeah.
Basi
Yes, sir.
gi-remote. Di ba na? Yeah. Oo, mayon na siya accessible and accessible due to protection level. Mhm. Ay, ayun. Okay na. So, okay na. All right. So, now, if you guys want to overrides, no, so you can do overriding the methods, no? So, like for an instance, if you want to do overriding toString of an object, so you just have to do that. Inana lang siya, kasimple. Okay, let's say, override na to si set ID. Sa yung gitambal sa yung ubo. Wala lang.
Kispirin.
Kamunggay na sir.
Kamunggay, unsa ano kamunggay?
Sa kuya ba daw sa
Iubo lang.
Pugaan, sir.
Tubig-tubig ra sir eh.
Bitaw no, tubig-tubig.
What is life ya sir?
Ambot na yung mga past few months dali ra makita maano hag flow ani oy. So ayun, ana lang siya. This is
sir, oy.
lagi po no. Actually katong pag ano namo naglakaw mi sa unsa may ba katong kwarisma. Oo. So
Yes, sir.
mao to ang ulan-ulanan, init gikan yan na ulanan. Mao to. So method overriding. Ayan. So again, this is how you do polymorphism. So polymorphism is creating or establishing a relationship to your in between among na lang among classes. So that's how you do inheritance, and then runtime polymorphism is method overriding. So this means that you can inherit whatever is from the whatever publicly declared from your other classes. Okay, so I will need to cut this off kasi amang good ko klase, actually among klase is 4 pero nahangi ko na mag-extend lang ko gamay sa inyo ha. So by 5 mag-meet na mi sa ako ang third year kay mag-defense mang pud meron. So I need to cut this off. So I just hope na na-review na to ang OOP, and the next meeting will have I want you guys to prepare for your M2 assessment. So I will have you to demonstrate individually. So magpa-program ko and then individual atong programming. And then after that, we'll proceed with the event-driven and then integrative programming na ta so that you can start working on your project. Okay, is that all clear? Are we all clear?
Yes sir.
C# gamiton sir.
Yes, C# man ta atong language karon. So C#. So you can use VS Code, Visual Studio. Pwede sa Eclipse, pwede man ka mag C# dito. Anything basta kay makaparan mo og unsa na program. Okay?
bisag unsa sir?
So dili na lang koy iunsa na ako mag-instruct. individual. Dali lang. Focus ta sa object-oriented principles. Okay, so especially sa encapsulation. Okay, kasi balikan mangyapon nato ni pag-abot sa integrative programming ang encapsulation. Kasi most of the things we will do is in event-driven as well in integrative programming are full-blown of OOP. So nag-review lang tag OOP for you to at least kay lahi man siya na language, at least you have an idea of what is it in what it takes in kumbaga what is it like in C# kung mag-OOP ta. Okay? So this would be either sa Monday or sa Tuesday. So I mo kadlok because I'll be guiding you all throughout until maano niyo. So every time lang na ako i-instruct, so isulat niyo and then basta I will discuss you what unsa ang mahitabuan na. I'll give you the rubrics for us to have our M2 assessment. And then so we could now proceed to our M3 our module 3 which is event driven, and then paspasan na to until maabot na tag integrative programming. Okay? So para again maka-start na mo working on your projects. So I guess that would be all for now. So anything or any question or clarification so far?
Wala na guro, sir.
Wala? Okay. Sige. So, screenshot sa nako inyohang actually na naman yung attendance naka-record man pod ni automatic man yung attendance dire. So, thank you guys and have a great day ahead.
Dira picture sir.
Mana? Hoy, Diyos ko Lord. O sige na kay
Salamat,
mag-class
sir.
ako sa Pikas ha. Bye-bye.
Sir, bye-bye sir.
Sir.
Okay.
Abuse.
Love you
Adieu.
too. Yeah, Judd.